Elvis Presley once blasted his television screen with a handgun simply because singer Robert Goulet appeared on it. He impulsively flew to Washington, D.C. and talked his way into a meeting with President Richard Nixon, leaving the Oval Office with a federal narcotics agent's badge. He bought fleets of Cadillacs on a whim, handing the keys over to friends, staff, and sometimes complete strangers he just met. His beloved pet chimpanzee. Scatter learned to drink whiskey and once caused thousands of dollars in damage to a hotel suite. Elvis and his entourage engaged in full-scale Roman candle wars on the grounds of Graceland, sometimes setting trees and fences on fire. He once demanded his pilot land mid-flight because he wanted waffles. Number 6. When Elvis handed out Cadillacs like party favors. Imagine walking into a car dealership, not to buy one car, but maybe 10 or 14. That was just another Tuesday for Elvis Presley when the mood struck him. His generosity was legendary, but also wildly impulsive and often staggering in scale, especially when it came to cars, particularly Cadillacs. The Memphis Mafia, his loyal inner circle of friends, family, and employees, were often the beneficiaries, but sometimes pure luck determined who drove away in a brand new luxury car, courtesy of the king. One of the most famous instances happened in Memphis in 1975. Elvis was browsing at Madison Cadillac, a dealership he frequented. He wasn't just looking, he was buying. He started picking out cars for members of his crew. Then, according to witnesses like Memphis Mafia member Joe Esposito, Elvis spotted a bank teller named Menilel Person admiring a gold and white Eldorado through the showroom window. She was reportedly just waiting for her husband and happened to comment to someone nearby that it was a beautiful car. Elvis overheard her. He walked over, introduced himself, as if he needed to, and started chatting with her. He asked her if she liked the car. She said she did. Elvis then turned to the dealership owner, slapped the car's hood, and declared he was buying it for her, just like that. Mrs. Person was stunned, initially thinking it was some kind of joke or publicity stunt. But Elvis was serious. He arranged for the purchase on the spot. Reports say. She burst into tears, utterly overwhelmed by the unexpected gift. Elvis simply smiled, gave her a hug, and continued his shopping spree. That day alone, he reportedly bought somewhere between 10 and 14 Cadillacs, spending well over $100,000, which was a huge sum in 1975, handing keys out to very surprised bank teller. This wasn't an isolated incident. Giving away cars was one of Elvis's signature moves. He saw it as sharing his good fortune. If he liked you, if you did something nice for him, or sometimes if you just happened to be in the right place at the right time when he was feeling generous, you might end up with a car. He gave cars to his inner circle constantly. Red West, Sonny West, the Marfike, Joe Esposito, Jerry Schilling, Charlie Hodge, they all received multiple vehicles over the years. He gave cars to his cook, his maids, his doctor, his dentist, his jeweler. He bought his girlfriend, Linda Thompson, numerous cars. He bought cars for his father, Vernon, and other relatives. He bought a pink Cadillac for his mother, Gladys. Early in his career, even though she didn't drive, it became an iconic symbol. After her death, it remained a treasured possession. Sometimes the Gillabays were smaller scale, but still impulsive. "Bodyguard, Sam," Thompson recalled, Elvis deciding late one night that Sam needed a new car. They drove straight to a dealership, roused the owner from bed, and Elvis bought Sam a Pontiac Grand Prix right then and there. Another story involved Elvis and his crew driving through Memphis when Elvis spotted a woman stranded with a broken-down car. He pulled over his own custom. Stutz, Blackhawk, told one of the guys to call the dealership and bought the woman a new car on the spot, instructing his associate to make sure she got home safely. The Memphis Mafia guys knew the drill. When Elvis announced a trip to the Cadillac dealership, everyone knew someone, or many someones, was about to get lucky. It was part of the whirlwind of living in Elvis's orbit, moments of incredible, almost unbelievable generosity mixed with the everyday chaos. For Elvis, spending vast sums of money on extravagant gifts, especially cars, seemed almost therapeutic, a way to express affection or appreciation in the most tangible way he knew how. It was outrageous, excessive. But for those involved, it was just Elvis being Elvis. He didn't just buy a car. He bought the dealership out, if he felt like it. Number 5. The time a whiskey-drinking chimp samed Scatter terrorized Graceland and beyond. Elvis Presley loved animals, but his taste sometimes ran towards the exotic. In the late 1950s or early 1960s, he acquired a chimpanzee named Scatter. Initially, Scatter was meant to be a fun, amusing addition to the Graceland household. He belonged to entertainer Captain Bill Kilbrew, but became a long-term guest, essentially Elvis's pet. What followed was pure primate chaos, amplified by the enabling atmosphere of the Memphis Mafia. Scatter wasn't just any chimp. He was practically one of the guys, or at least he tried to be. Elvis and the Mafia treated him less like a pet and more like a furry, unpredictable toddler with a penchant for mischief and booze. They dressed Scatter in custom-made suits and outfits. He learned, or rather was encouraged, to mimic human behavior, including drinking alcohol. Accounts from Memphis Mafia members like Lamar Fike paint a picture of Scatter downing whiskey or bourbon with the boys. Predictably, this often ended badly. At Graceland, Scatter had the run of the place, much to the horror of Elvis's father, Vernon, and the household staff. Vernon, known for being frugal and easily exasperated by Elvis's excesses, particularly disliked the chimp. Scatter seemed to sense this and delighted in tormenting him. He would sneak up on Vernon, pull pranks, and generally make a nuisance of himself. The chimp's antics escalated from annoying to genuinely destructive and dangerous. Scatter developed the habit of pulling down women's skirts which, while perhaps amusing to Elvis and the guys initially, quickly became problematic. He reportedly bit several people, though accounts vary on the severity. His behavior was wild and unpredictable. One infamous story involves Scatter accompanying Elvis and the crew on a trip. They were staying in a hotel, and Scatter was left unattended in a suite. When they returned, the room was utterly demolished. Furniture was overturned and broken, curtains were torn down, lamps were smashed, and food was everywhere. The chimp had gone on a rampage, causing thousands of dollars in damages. Elvis, often amused by chaos he didn't have to clean up, reportedly found it hilarious though he footed the bill. Scatter's reign of terror wasn't confined to Graceland or hotel rooms. He sometimes rode in cars with Elvis and the gang. Imagine cruising down the highway and looking over to see a chimpanzee in a little suit sitting in the passenger seat next to the king of rock and roll. The Mafia guys were Scatter's handlers, playmates, and often his enablers. They taught him tricks, gave him drinks, and egged on his wild behavior. Cleaning up his messes, both literal and figurative, became part of their job description. However, even their patience wore thin as Scatter became more aggressive and unmanageable. The stories about Scatter often highlight the surreal bubble Elvis lived in. Having a whiskey-guzzling chimpanzee tearing up your house or hotel room was just another bizarre Tuesday. The rules of normal life didn't seem to apply. Elvis found Scatter's antics entertaining, a live-action cartoon happening in his own home. Eventually, Scatter's behavior became too much even for Elvis's high tolerance for chaos. There are conflicting accounts about Scatter's ultimate fate. Some say he became too aggressive and had to be removed from Graceland, possibly sent back to Captain Killebrew or to a zoo or sanctuary. Others suggest a darker end, hinting he might have been poisoned or died under mysterious circumstances after biting one of the maids severely. Whatever the specifics, Scatter the chimp eventually disappeared from the Graceland scene, leaving behind a legacy of legendary primate mayhem and serving as one of the most outrageous examples of the anything-goes atmosphere surrounding the king. Number 4. When Elvis's karate obsession led to dangerous demonstrations. Elvis Presley wasn't just casually interested in martial arts. He was deeply, intensely obsessed with karate. It became a massive part of his life from the late 1950s onwards. He trained seriously, eventually earning a black belt and several subsequent degrees, though the legitimacy or speed of some later rankings is sometimes debated. But Elvis, being Elvis, this wasn't just about personal discipline. His karate practice often spilled over into impulsive, sometimes dangerous demonstrations involving the Memphis Mafia as his human props. Elvis trained under respected instructors like Ed Parker, founder of American Kenpo, and Master Kang Ree, founder of Pasario. He incorporated karate moves into his stage performances in the 1970s, adding dramatic chops and high kicks to his routines. He even funded karate tournaments and schools. His passion was genuine. However, his status as Elvis Presley meant his training and practice often occurred within the strange reality distortion field that surrounded him. The Memphis Mafia guys were expected to train with him. Red West and Sonny West, both physically imposing figures, became adept martial artists themselves, partially out of genuine interest and partially because Elvis demanded it. They were his sparring partners, his training dummies, and the audience for his often impromptu demonstrations of skill. These demonstrations could happen anywhere, anytime. In hotel suites, backstaged, at Graceland, even on movie sets. Elvis would suddenly decide to show off a new technique, often involving breaking boards or bricks. The problem: the boards or bricks were usually held by one of the Memphis Mafia. While Elvis was skilled, the potential for injury was always present. Hands were hit, fingers were jammed, and nerves were frayed as guys like Red or Sonny braced themselves, hoping Elvis's aim was true that day. Red West, in particular, often found himself on the receiving end. In one incident described in memoirs, Elvis was demonstrating a powerful strike and accidentally hit Red near the eye, causing a serious injury that required medical attention. Despite the risks, loyalty and employment kept the Mafia guys participating. Complaining or refusing could mean being cast out of the inner circle. Elvis became fascinated with the more mystical or extreme aspects of martial arts, including the concept of the death touch or dim mak, the idea of striking pressure points to cause delayed injury or death. He would talk about it intensely and sometimes practice related moves, adding an extra layer of unease for his human practice targets. The karate obsession also fueled Elvis's paranoia and his desire to project strength and control. He saw karate not just as a physical discipline, but as a way to defend himself and assert dominance. There were times when Elvis, feeling slighted or angry, would challenge someone to a karate fight or use karate stances and warnings to intimidate people. One story involves a confrontation on a movie set. Elvis felt disrespected by a director or crew member and reportedly squared off, ready to use his skills. The Memphis Mafia often had to de-escalate these situations, acting as buffers between Elvis's karate-fueled temper and the outside world. Even his stage performances weren't immune. Sometimes, caught up in the moment, his karate moves became overly aggressive. There are accounts of him accidentally injuring himself or band members with stray kicks or chops during concerts. His famous jeweled jumpsuits were, in part, designed to allow for the freedom of movement his karate required on stage. The karate phase was more than just a hobby. It was an integral part of Elvis's persona in his later years. It shaped his look, his stage presence, and his interactions with those around him. For the Memphis Mafia, it meant constant vigilance, participation in potentially hazardous training sessions, and witnessing the king channel his energy, discipline, and sometimes his aggression through the lens of martial arts. It was another facet of the extreme, unpredictable world they inhabited, where their boss might demonstrate a bone-breaking technique on them at any given moment. Number 3. The time Elvis and the boys waged actual fireworks wars. Forget a few sparklers on the 4th of July. When Elvis Presley and the Memphis Mafia decided to play with fireworks, it escalated into full-blown quasi-military campaigns involving thousands of dollars worth of explosives and a complete disregard for personal safety or property damage. These weren't isolated incidents. Fireworks wars became a regular, albeit dangerous, pastime at Graceland and other locations where Elvis set up temporary court. The setup was usually simple: Elvis versus the guys, or sometimes the Mafia dividing into teams. The arsenal, however, was anything but simple. Elvis would spend lavishly, buying massive quantities of the most powerful fireworks legally, and sometimes perhaps illegally, available. We're talking rockets, M80s, which were incredibly potent, cherry bombs, Roman candles, bottle rockets, enough firepower to stage a small-town festival finale, all for their private amusement. The battlefield was often the expansive lawn and grounds of Graceland. Sometimes, these wars took place at rented houses in California or vacation spots. The objective varied. Sometimes it was just chaotic fun, shooting fireworks into the night sky. Other times, it became more competitive, with armies launching volleys at each other. Roman candles became the weapons of choice for direct combat. Elvis and the guys would actually shoot flaming balls of strontium and copper salts at each other from relatively close range. They'd dodge, take cover behind trees or cars, and return fire. Burns were inevitable, though usually minor. The thrill seemed to outweigh the risk. Rockets were launched horizontally across the grounds, sometimes aimed at specific targets like trees, fences, or even vehicles parked nearby. There are accounts of near misses, where powerful rockets whizzed past someone's head or slammed into the side of a car. M80s and cherry bombs were thrown like grenades, their powerful concussions echoing through the Memphis night or Bel Air or Palm Springs. The potential for disaster was enormous. Dry grass could ignite, trees could catch fire, and property could be damaged. And sometimes it was. Small fires occasionally broke out, requiring quick stomping or dousing by the participants, adding another layer of frantic excitement to the proceedings. Fences might get scorched, or windows might rattle from nearby explosions. Inevitably, the noise and chaos would attract attention. Neighbors would complain, and sometimes the police would show up at Graceland's gates. But a visit from the cops rarely stopped the fun for long. Elvis, Nedick, and influential, could usually smooth things over. He might apologize, promise to keep it down, a promise rarely kept for long, or make a generous donation to a police charity. His fame often acted as a shield, allowing behavior that would land anyone else in serious trouble. The Memphis Mafia guys were willing participants, caught up in the excitement and the desire to please their boss. It was part of the job description. Be ready for anything, whether it's accompanying Elvis to a movie set or dodging fireworks aimed at your head. The atmosphere was one of reckless adolescent fun, carried out by grown men with access to unlimited funds. Lamar Fike, one of the core Memphis Mafia members, described these nights as insane, filled with noise, flashing lights, and the constant smell of gunpowder. Yet, he also conveyed the sense of camaraderie and shared adventure, however ill-advised. It was boys being boys on a ridiculously grand and dangerous scale. These fireworks, wars weren't just about blowing things up. They were another manifestation of the bubble Elvis lived in, a world without consequences, where boredom could be staved off with increasingly extreme activities. If shooting TVs got old, and karate demos became routine, why not stage your own pyrotechnic battles? For Elvis and the Memphis Mafia, setting the night sky, and occasionally the lawn, ablaze with thousands of dollars worth of fireworks, was just another way to pass the time, another outrageous chapter in their shared story. Number 2. When Elvis declared war on television sets, especially if Robert Goulet was on. Elvis Presley owned a lot of television sets throughout his life. He also destroyed a lot of them. It wasn't uncommon for Elvis, in a fit of pique, or sometimes just on a whim, to pull out one of the many handguns he kept nearby and blast the screen. The Memphis Mafia got used to the sound of shattering glass and the sight of a smoking TV set needing replacement, sometimes several in a single night. The most famous, almost legendary instance involved the singer Robert Goulet. Elvis was at home, watching TV, when Goulet appeared on screen singing. For reasons never fully clarified, perhaps professional jealousy, perhaps a dislike for Goulet's smooth baritone style, perhaps something Goulet had once said, or perhaps no real reason at all, Elvis flew into a rage. He grabbed a gun and shot the television set point blank, obliterating the screen and silencing Goulet's mid-note. Members of the Memphis Mafia, who witnessed this or similar incidents, described Elvis's reaction as immediate and visceral. He wouldn't necessarily rant or rave, he'd just see something on the screen that displeased him, calmly pick up a firearm, shoot the TV, and then act as if nothing particularly unusual had happened. It was the job of the Mafia guys to clean up the mess, dispose of the ruined television, and make sure a new one was procured and installed promptly, often before Elvis even woke up the next day if it happened late at night. Robert Goulet wasn't the only celebrity to incur Elvis's televised wrath. Other performers, news reports, or shows that annoyed him could meet the same fate. If a singer didn't meet his standards, if an actor rubbed him the wrong way, if a news segment upset him, bang. Another TV bites the dust. Estimates suggest Elvis may have destroyed dozens, possibly hundreds, of television sets over the years. This habit wasn't confined to Graceland. It happened in his homes in California and hotel suites in Las Vegas, or wherever he was staying. Wherever Elvis was, guns were usually close at hand, and televisions were potential targets. The Mafia learned to anticipate these moments, sometimes subtly trying to change the channel or distract Elvis if they sensed trouble brewing, but often his reaction was too quick. They also learned not to stand too close to the TV when Elvis was watching it with a gun nearby. The sheer casualness of the act was part of what made it so outrageous. For Elvis, a television set was a disposable object easily replaced. Shooting it was just a way to instantly eliminate something that annoyed him. It spoke volumes about his wealth, his power within his own environment, and his impulsive nature. Consequences that would apply to ordinary people: the cost of replacement, the danger of discharging a firearm indoors, the potential legal issues simply didn't seem to register or matter in Elvis's world. The Memphis Mafia treated it as just another quirk of their boss. Replacing shot-out TVs became a routine expense, part of the cost of maintaining Elvis's environment. Joe Esposito and others recounted stories of needing to keep a supply of replacement TVs on hand, especially during periods when Elvis seemed particularly trigger-happy. This recurring act of destruction provides a stark image of Elvis's frustration and isolation. Trapped by his fame, often bored and restless, lashing out at an inanimate object might have been a release valve. He couldn't control the world outside, but he could certainly control what appeared on his TV screen, albeit in the most extreme way possible. For the Memphis Mafia, the sound of Elvis Presley shooting yet another television was just background noise in the strange, often volatile world of the king. Number 1. The bizarre story of how Elvis got a federal narcotics gauge from President Nixon. Perhaps one of the most surreal and well-documented episodes involving Elvis and his unique sphere of reality occurred in December 1970. It started impulsively, involved a handwritten letter on American Airlines stationery, and culminated in an Oval Office meeting with President Richard Nixon, resulting in Elvis Presley being awarded an honorary badge from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, BNDD, the precursor to the DEA. The catalyst was seemingly random. Elvis was reportedly upset by what he saw as the pervasive drug culture and anti-establishment sentiment in America. He decided, quite suddenly, that he wanted to help his country by becoming a federal agent at large. He believed his fame could allow him to infiltrate youth culture and counter the influence of drugs and groups he saw as un-American, like the Beatles, whom he apparently criticized to Nixon. His first step was characteristically impulsive. He flew from Memphis to Washington, D.C., then realized he didn't have enough money on him. $500 wasn't going to cut it for his Ella plans. Flew to Los Angeles, had an argument with his father Vernon and wife Priscilla about his spending, and then promptly flew back to Washington, D.C., determined to meet the president. He brought along Memphis, Mafia members Jerry Schilling and Sonny West for parts of the journey. Though initially he flew alone on commercial flights, much to the surprise of fellow passengers and airline staff. During one of the flights, Elvis penned a 5-page letter to President Nixon. In it, he introduced himself, expressed his admiration for the president, explained his concerns about the country, and offered his services. He mentioned his study of drug abuse and communist brainwashing techniques, and stated, "I can and will do more good if I were made a federal agent at large." He emphasized his ability to reach young people and requested a meeting, leaving a phone number where he could be reached at his Washington hotel. He hand-delivered this letter to a White House security guard at the Northwest Gate. Amazingly, the letter quickly made its way up the chain of command. Nixon's aides, particularly Egil Bud Krogh, saw a potential public relations opportunity in associating the president with the massively popular and culturally conservative Elvis. They arranged a meeting for the very next day, December 21st, 1970. Elvis arrived at the White House, dressed flamboyantly in a purple velvet suit with a huge gold belt buckle and an accompanying cape. He also brought gifts for the president, a commemorative Colt .45 pistol mounted in a display case. Bringing a firearm into the Oval Office required special clearance, which was hastily arranged. The meeting itself, documented by official White House memos and photographs, was surreal. Elvis reiterated his desire to help fight drugs and communism. He showed Nixon pictures of his wife and daughter, and police badges he had collected from various jurisdictions. He reportedly expressed criticism of the Beatles, whom he felt were anti-American. The core of his request, however, was specific. He wanted a badge from the BND. Nixon, initially perhaps bemused, was persuaded by Krogh that giving Elvis an honorary badge would be a harmless gesture that could yield positive publicity. Despite the fact that the BND didn't actually have a position called Federal Agent at Large, Nixon ordered Krogh to get Elvis a badge. A BNDD badge was procured, and Nixon presented it to a clearly delighted Elvis Presley right there in the Oval Office. Photographs from the meeting show a beaming Elvis shaking hands with Nixon, proudly displaying his new badge. For Elvis, this wasn't just a souvenir. According to Schilling and others, he genuinely believed the badge conferred upon him official authority. He reportedly felt he could now carry firearms and drugs anywhere he wanted, potentially even make arrests, under the guise of his federal status. The Memphis Mafia watched this unfold with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Jerry Schilling played a key role in facilitating the meeting once Elvis was in D.C., making calls and navigating the White House bureaucracy. The whole episode encapsulated the power of Elvis's fame, his ability to bypass normal channels and achieve the seemingly impossible, driven by sheer impulse and star power. It also highlighted his sometimes naive worldview and his growing detachment from conventional reality. Elvis treasured the BND badge and reportedly carried it with him. While he never actually attempted to conduct undercover operations or make arrests, The meeting with Nixon and the acquisition of the federal badge remained one of the most outlandish, yet entirely true stories from a life filled with them, a testament to a time when the king of rock and roll could talk his way into the Oval Office just because he decided to.